my first job in high school was building websites for somebody in their garage.
Were you on the graphics side, the coding side? Like, what did you?
Yeah, I was doing HTML and all that stuff. So building websites.
Did you start coding as well? Like, did you study CS in college or?
Yeah, I studied computer science in college and economics, but even back in high school, I was like that nerdy kid who was reading a book on Java,
I was the same way.
At lunch.
Yeah. Did you get made fun of by the older kids or?
Just like a lot of weird looks, I think, but not really made fun of, yeah.
Yeah, so my high school was brutal. I got made fun of pretty hardcore for being into computers, but that was a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
So studied CS, and then when did you eventually make it up to San Francisco?
Well, it took a while to get back there. So I went to school in Texas at Rice University, and then I actually lived abroad in Argentina for a year. And then I came back after that to Palo Alto and then San Francisco. So I've been back in San Francisco about 3 years.
And then did you always know that you wanted to get involved in a startup, or was it something where you were thinking about working with a bigger company? Or?
Yeah, I mean, even in high school, I was trying to do startups, and I was creating little web design companies, and friends of mine would always we had a new business idea, I think, every 6 months. So I definitely had the bug at an early age. And then I went through a period where, I did a startup kind of back around 2005, and then I joined, went back into the working world and tried that for a bit to kind of learn more, build my network, and then I just, went off to go do Coinbase about a year and a half ago. So
that's a pretty common theme, with entrepreneurs. When I sat down with Evan Williams a few episodes ago, and he was talking about how he used to make VHS video cassettes on how to use the internet and sell VHS tapes. So I feel like almost all entrepreneurs always had that bug from an earlier age or something in them where they wanted to create something. So what caught your eye initially about Bitcoin? What was it? Do you remember when you first heard about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I do remember. I think it was Christmas of 2010. And I was reading Hacker News. I was actually home with my family in San Jose, and I read the Satoshi research paper on Hacker News. And it actually almost immediately grabbed me. I didn't really fully understand it, but something about it, I actually distinctly remember having the feeling that this was the most important thing I had read in the last 5 years. And it was at a point where my mother was actually, kind of saying, hey, you need to come down and spend time with the family. They flew in from out of town, and I was like, I cannot stop reading this. This is the most important thing I've read. So it took me, over the next 3 months, I read it a bunch of other times and read some other things. But it took a while to finally, wrap my head around it and think through all the implications of it.
How big was the community back then?
It was really tiny, and it's funny because I actually remember feeling like I was late to the game, which people tell me now when they're just finding out about Bitcoin, they feel like they missed the boat or they're late to the game, which neither one is true. But yeah, I remember going to a couple Bitcoin meetups, probably around 2011-ish, and there was maybe a dozen people there or 10 people there, so it was a really small community.
And so you were involved at that time. Were you buying Bitcoins?
I think the first Bitcoin I bought was around $8 or something. So I was kind of still wrapping my head around it and, getting ready to pull the trigger.
With all of it feels to me like there was, obviously, I guess the main Bitcoin client was the only thing that was out there. Was there any was there Electrum or any of those others, Multibit or?
Not that I remember. I think there was the Java library. The one that Mike Hearn had worked on, that was out, I believe, but not too much else.
It seems to me like it would be really scary to think, okay, well, I'm going to go and create a web-based wallet that, pretty much is everyone is going to try and hack into.
Yeah.
Why create a web-based wallet? Why not just create a software-based one for the desktop?
So there was a few steps along the way to get there, actually. So the first thing that I did, I was kind of trying to talk myself out of doing something in Bitcoin, honestly, because I figured it would be a huge amount of work, and I was really interested in it, but I knew that if I started to go down that path, I would just get completely sucked into it. So the first thing I did to kind of experiment in that area was myself and a friend of mine, we created an Android app that was essentially just a wallet, and it was an open source app. All the data was stored right on the phone, so it wasn't like we were taking any responsibility by storing people's information. It was kind of like a open source, use at your own risk kind of experimental wallet.
What was the name of that?
I think it was just called Bitcoin Android or Bitcoin Wallet. I can't remember. Yeah, Bitcoin Android, I think, was the name of it. And we released that out, to the world and open sourced it. And it got a lot of attention. It got, well, for us at the time, it got 15,000 installs in the first couple of weeks. People translated it into German and Russian and Chinese on Hacker News or on GitHub.
So this was all open source then?
Yeah. And Wired wrote a little piece on it, and a couple things happened. I mean, one was I realized, all right, there's something to this. It kind of validated the idea. People really are interested in this if Bitcoin becomes a little bit easier to use. That was the kind of thing we were focusing on, was try to make it really good, design focused and easy to use. And another thing happened, which was I immediately realized we had built it in a way that was a dead end. And the reason was that all the data was stored on the phone, and so we had no way to really. If something went wrong and we had to push updates to the phone, there was like data corruption. The whole kind of last 5 years of software development that had been built around this cloud-based architecture, which had made things super reliable and redundant. I had kind of thrown all that out the window and gone back to this model on the phone because I was afraid of taking responsibility for storing people's data, which is what a real company has to do. And this wasn't a real company; it was an open source throwaway project, and I had a full-time job and everything. And so almost the day we released it, I realized that, and I had this realization, like, somebody is going to have to make a really rock-solid cloud service for this, and that is the future. The phone is going to be a thin client. It's not going to have all the brains and everything right on there, or all the data. And also, of course, the side point to this was that the blockchain at that time was 300 megabytes, so we could store it right on the phone, but it was growing exponentially.
Those were the days.
Yeah, and even then, when people installed the app, we had in the instructions when they installed it, it said, make sure you're connected to Wi-Fi, and it'll take like a couple hours to download all the data and everything like that.
Right. Now it's like 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that was, and then after that, I kind of had the idea, at least conceptually, of doing something more like Coinbase.
Were you worried at the time? Like, it's always seemed to me, at least personally, that wallets for the phone, I get when you push all of the data out into the cloud, but on the phone, I mean, it's like you're carrying around like a cash wallet, basically. Like, you lose that phone. I've lost tons of phones. I don't know about you, but like, you lose everything. I guess unless you have it backed up somehow. But Android was never really good at that. Like having, well, I guess Google would do a backup, but would it also back up your wallet?
Well, there was a couple ways you could do it, yeah. So Android had a built-in kind of data store that could be backed up to the cloud, but people who were paranoid didn't trust Google with those things. You could also keep your own data in the cloud. You could also put encrypted data in the cloud, so it would come over the wire encrypted and then would be decrypted locally. Like, people have been experimenting with all these things which take advantage of the redundancy and the reliability of the cloud without kind of putting too much trust in other third parties.
So you decided to go off and build this. You joined YC to do this. So was this the original idea that you applied to YC with?
Yeah, it's the exact idea.
And so you spent, what, 2-3 months there building it?
Yeah, so I mean, there was actually a prototype of what is now Coinbase that I was working on sort of at nights and weekends kind of thing. And it was a basic web wallet. That was all the functionality it had. And so applied with a prototype that was functional and not launched yet. And then during YC, there was 2 or 3 months there where everybody's just working hard, getting their thing ready, did a soft launch on Hacker News, got a tiny bit of press about it, maybe another 10 or 15,000 users, kind of the first group of people really signed up and using it. And then it all kind of culminated at the end with demo day and going out and trying to raise some seed investment.
How did you approach, like, from the get-go? And I think that in building apps, having built a bunch of apps myself, like there's ways to rapidly prototype things. I mean, obviously with frameworks out there like Rails and others, like you can get something up and off the ground in like a matter of minutes. So, what mindset did you go into when you were building this that was different than, say, building a standard just like web app? Like, was there a certain level of engineer that you were looking for? Because obviously there's a lot of engineers out there that can quickly hack together some Node and some, and just get things working. Or how did you put together your team?
Yeah, well, I mean, even at that phase, actually, the team was almost non-existent. So I was really just starting to think about all those things. But yeah, I think, and the people who I reached out to try to form the early version of the team, there was one guy in particular who had a really good security background. And he's actually still working with us as a contractor. He actually lives in Germany. and he released this. We met on GitHub, which is like a really nerdy thing to say, but he actually released this open source library called Bitcoin Ruby. And I remember reading his code and thinking that it was pretty amazing. So I had like kind of this nerd crush on him, And so he started emailing over a period of months, and finally got him to do a couple Skype calls and things like that. And now he's come to San Francisco a number of times to hang out with us and everything like that. But he deserves a lot of credit for. He's one of these guys where if there's ever some crypto problem or crazy coding edge case, I send it to him in Germany, and he sends me back a solution in like 20 minutes. So
you treat him as like an outside consultant then to like validate your thinking when you're developing some of the security models for what you're building?
Yeah, I mean, even today he helps us as a contractor doing all sorts of things, building features on the site. But especially in the early days, he was great at helping validate like edge cases and a lot of security like holes, and writing really, one of the things we spent a lot of time doing in the early days was writing a really massive test suite for all the code. So even to this day, we have over 200 tests that run against the code before every deploy. And he and I were sort of like really intense about testing every possible edge case. And I think that helped the security and the reliability of the site a lot.
So I'm curious, can you go into some detail about how the back end works? Because I feel that, I've felt this as well. I mean, obviously, I'm really lucky in that we've known each other before this interview, and so I feel like worst case scenario, I can like give you a call, shoot you an email, and be like, oh my God, I'm freaking out here. Like, like what about all those people out there that don't know you and they're trusting you with these, like in some cases, I'm sure hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like what do you have in place? Like, how does this work? How is this different than a typical web app? And how do you prevent someone from just going in and just straight sending all of those dollars out? Like, I mean, I transfer coins out all the time and it's like 3 clicks. Like, yes, I have two-factor auth on, which I guess you try to push on a lot of people, but what else security-wise do you put in place?
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the most important things we've done is we made a decision early on to keep the vast majority of customer funds actually entirely offline. And so there was, well, let me take a step back further. So there was sort of two, I think, approaches we could have gone with this. One would have been to kind of push the responsibility of security to the user. And that is a valid approach, I think, for technical users. They might be a little bit more comfortable with that.
You mean storing the keys to access that locally? Yeah,
so for example, we could only store encrypted data and put the responsibility of, say, the password or anything like that on the customer. And that's a valid approach, but I think if you were to go to somebody like my mother and say, well, here's your online banking, and by the way, if you forget your password, all your money is gone in your bank account. Mm-hmm. That's not really a good way to start a relationship with a mass market audience, right?
Sure.
So we sort of identified that was missing in the Bitcoin ecosystem was this a mass market, easy to use product, and part of that is security, right? And so we made a decision where we said, we're actually going to try to provide security as a service to customers instead of pushing the responsibility onto them to do it themselves. And so that became basically providing secure Bitcoin storage as a service. And one of the key aspects of that we do is, we actually take the majority of funds completely offline, disconnect it from the internet. We do something called key splitting, which is where you use redundancy and you only need, say, 3 of the 5 parts. The numbers could be anything. It could be 5 of 10 or 2 of 3 or whatever. But you split the keys with redundancy, and we actually distribute them geographically all over the world, so that each of the pieces is in a safe deposit box somewhere geographically. But
so what unlocks those keys? So you're saying you pull the key together in order to access the funds?
Right. You can imagine like nuclear launch codes. You need like 2 of the keys to turn at the same time, and if the vice president has been incapacitated, there's somebody else who has a key, right? So it requires consensus, and also there's redundancy. So if any individual piece is lost, the total key is not lost. Even multiple pieces can be destroyed or lost in various ways. Mm-hmm. So that's a really important part of what we have today. Just to take it one step further, and there's a lot of things we can't, we're not really ready to announce yet or anything like that, but I think there's actually a way we can get the best of both worlds. So, it's not like a binary thing, like 100% responsibility of the customer, 100% responsibility of Coinbase.
Right.
I think there's actually some really cool ways we can share the responsibility and provide some services that people really want around like leaving Bitcoin in their will and things like that, where if they really do disappear, like their heirs can recreate the key and with one piece stored with Coinbase or something like that. But in any given day-to-day scenario, it's not like they're trusting us with the full amount of the data.
Right.
So I'm kind of hinting at one idea that we could do in the future, and there's a few others which we're not really ready to announce. But you can imagine that I personally think that's the way that the services are going to end up going in Bitcoin.
Do you think there's ever going to be like an FDIC kind of based insurance that will back and support, like some type of stamp you'll be able to put on your website and say, like, if we get hacked, you're insured up to $100,000?
Yeah. I don't think it'll be FDIC like government backed, but I do think those things can come out of the private insurance market.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about the offline storage component. So what happens? I have a hard time like wrapping my head around if someone wants to come in and access their coins. How does that get moved from offline to online?
Yeah. Okay, so there's actually a hot wallet that's on the site with a small amount of funds. Let's say it's 5% of customer funds. And in any given, most users on the site don't control more than 5% of all deposits on Coinbase. And so with the day-to-day kind of activity that's going around the site, you don't need to keep all the funds. You can just have, say, 5% of funds on the server, and that's servicing all the normal day-to-day flow. And
does that spike when there's like, let's say there's some kind of crazy crash happening right now and everyone's like, I want to get out?
Yeah.
Do you have to then bump that reserve up to like 15%?
Exactly. So that's actually the one situation that is most common when you would actually need to restore keys from offline. So it's in the situation where there'd be a price drop and a lot of people want to sell at the same time. And I think in the last year and a half or so, we've only needed to restore offline keys maybe a handful of times. A couple, and that's...
Is that automated?
No, I mean it's like
you have to physically go in and plug in a server or something to like bring it from offline on, or?
We have to collect keys geographically from, and it's designed in a way where it can be done in a matter of hours. It's not an emergency, but that is a key component of the system. There's always this trade-off, right? Like you could make it much harder to collect the keys and have increased security, but it would increase the amount of time it would take to restore them, right? So there's always this balance you're making.
How do you go and do that then? Let's say there is a crash that's happening like right now, and all of a sudden you're like, shit, well I need to go from 5% reserves to 15%, but it's going to take a couple hours to get there, but people want to get their funds out. Like, it's kind of like run on the bank. Like how do you ensure that you do not have pickers saying, I can't transfer my funds out, this sucks? Like,
well, I mean, it's slightly different than the run on the bank since all the funds are there. There's no reserve ratio or anything like that. And we made it an explicit goal of the site that in the event of a price sell-off or something like that, you're always able to sell and lock in the price. And we have essentially all these alerts that go off as reserves start to go below certain thresholds.
So to rally the troops at some point because you're getting notifications. Yeah,
and we get there's like backups and there's text message even if it's in the middle of the night and everyone's asleep in San Francisco. There's a hierarchy of people who will start getting phone calls and woken up to restore keys and things like that.
Let's talk about selling because one of the things that you're not an exchange,
right?
But in some ways, it would be easy for people to assume that you're an exchange because you can buy and sell directly, on your site.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how that works on the back end? Like, if you're not an exchange, who do you deal with to buy and sell?
Yeah. So it's true that we're not an exchange in the traditional sense of the word. We don't have an order book with bids and asks and everything like that. The analogy is kind of a little bit closer to, let's say, New York Stock Exchange, and we're kind of more like a Fidelity or Schwab or somebody like that in this new ecosystem. It's a loose analogy, right? So we're trying to provide the easy consumer interface to an exchange, which we view as more of like a professional trader tool or B2B type service. We don't really disclose too many details about how we work on the back end, just because it opens up some potential for abuse. But needless to say, we collect pricing data from a variety of sources. We offset. We have a lot of flow that happens internally. And it's basically, there's a lot of work that's gone into pricing our risk in that scenario. So whenever we're issuing quotes, we feel very confident that we can actually source at those prices. And this is something my co-founder actually spent a lot of time working on, since he was an FX trader at Goldman Sachs before this and studied computer science. And he actually built out a pretty sophisticated backend to manage this entire process. So.
Do you, you charge fees to do these transactions. Mm-hmm. Do you ever make money on like that float between users when they're trying to sell and buy between each other?
So we charge 1% when people buy or sell.
Right, but what about like the opportunity to arbitrage, like the price, like on the exchanges versus what you have on your site?
Oh, I see. No, I mean, we've made it actually an explicit goal of the business to try not to, have like an algorithmic trading, profit center at this point. We actually are putting our best guess at what we can source it at, and we put 1% on top of it. Mm-hmm. So,
have you lost money there in the past, like where you didn't guess right? And
sure. I mean, you're never actually
in flux so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, we're quoting someone the price based on our current available data set. And even if they click the button, 2 seconds later, and we go out and we try to source it, that data has changed in some way. Mm-hmm. So the goal is not to get it right on every trade. It's at the end of the month when we average, did we get about 1%? And that's our target.
I see.
Yeah.
When you get the notification, I know a lot of users have talked about on forums and message boards that I can't buy any more coins today. Like you're out of coins for the day.
Yeah.
What does it mean when you're out of coins for the day?
So, I mean, we've experienced some pretty dramatic growth in the last year. And there are certain points where we are receiving so many buy orders that during a ramp up or something like that, that we reach a point where we don't feel comfortable we can continue to source coins at the prices that we're quoting. And so our only alternative at that point is to put some, price that's way off the charts, which is not fair to our customers, or to essentially pause buys. Or one thing we do is we say you can still buy, but you'll get the price when your funds arrive in 4 days. It's better than turning it off completely, but obviously not as good as people getting an exact quote of what price they'll get. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the growth has been really staggering. So I think in January, we might have done $1 million of buys and sells the whole month, and we were probably doing 15 million within a few months of that. And we're not disclosing exact numbers at this point, but needless to say, we're talking orders of magnitude above that. And I don't know what to say. We're not able to service all the demand sometimes.
Do you see this ramping over time, like month over month? Are you seeing growth? Is it one of those things where it depends on the marketing and mood swings of what's happening in the press? Do you think that impacts buying and selling a lot?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when we see the price go up or the price go down, we see increases in people buying and selling. But I think that's fine. There's this speculation that's happening right now, and that's people's focus on the price. And in a way, it's good because it's actually bringing awareness to tons of people who've never heard about Bitcoin, and lots of people who would never have Bitcoin end up with a little bit in their wallet. Obviously, we don't think that's the long-term potential of it. The more interesting long-term potential is around it being a payment network. And so this is a bootstrapping mechanism, if you will, that was built into Bitcoin, I think, by design, to encourage a lot of people in the early days to buy some and have a little bit. And so once the consumer, wallet side reaches some critical mass, you now have the necessary components for a real payment network to start to happen.
What are your thoughts on, a lot of people looking at the price and saying, well, $1,000, $1,200, that's like kind of the upper threshold of what the average consumer can wrap their head around spending, and not even the average consumer, but people saying like that's really pricey, it'll never go higher than that. And then you have some of these sites that are switching to now displaying MBTC. Yeah, so you see the price pegged at $1 versus $1,000.
Yeah.
Do you ever make that switch? Do you ever go to MBTC?
I think it's going to make a lot of sense for the industry to kind of come to some consensus on that, and probably it's going to be almost like Y2K, right? It's like everybody will pick a date, and the majority of people out there will all kind of switch over right on that date. So
have you thought about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to have to happen just from a pure usability point of view. So it's funny, there's a couple proposals in the community right now. There's like going to MBTC. Some people want to go all the way to like micro BTC.
Which is even one more step over, right?
Yeah.
2 more, right?
So you can either go 3 digits, 3, or you could go all the way to 6.
Right.
Or you could go all the way to 8, So anyway, there's all these proposals people were talking about.
Where are you at? Where does your head stand on that right now? Are you a fan of MBTC? Or?
I want the community to come to consensus, and I think we trust their judgment. I think doing something like moving 3 to millibitcoin, and then 3 more to micro in a few years, something like that seems like it probably would make sense. But
well, given that you're such a big player right now, I mean, obviously the biggest online wallet, it feels like if you made the move, like you would force a lot of others to do that. Like, do you feel like you're going to sit back and wait for it to mature another 6 months, or like, at what point do you decide internally and say, hey, everyone, like, we're changing the code, we're going to do this? Like, what kind of consensus has to happen for you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be viewed as like pushing anything on the Bitcoin community. We're here to service the Bitcoin community and make it easier to use. So I think there's a lot of people that would be better equipped to make that decision, whether it's the open source contributors, the miners, the Bitcoin Foundation.
So like when some of the clients start to switch, like let's say the official Bitcoin client makes the switch, then you'd be like, okay, now it's probably...
Yeah, and of course, Gavin Andreessen is an advisor on our board now, which we announced a couple weeks ago, and so we're in contact with him about these sort of things, and occasionally he asks for our opinion. Often we ask for his opinion on things, so we look to people like that to kind of offer guidance, but we're happy to kind of support once something looks like it's about to happen.
So let's talk about the merchant side really quick. Like, there's obviously, you look on Reddit and all these other sites about a Subway accepting Bitcoin. And it seems like every other week there's like some random business or person accepting Bitcoin. Like, what's the tipping point look like for you? When do you feel like the tools will be mature enough to see massive adoption of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll actually see pretty good adoption of Bitcoin by merchants this year.
What's going to get people there? Just like the buzz? Is it going to be...
Well, we're sort of right on the cusp of this critical mass on the consumer side. So it again comes back to this idea. We think of it as like phase 1 of Bitcoin was, and still is, largely about speculation and people buying it as an investment. And it's the consumer side just growing like gangbusters, right? We're just seeing the beginnings of merchant adoption, I think. And you have this chicken egg problem with any network, right? You need consumers and merchants who want to both use Bitcoin. And the way you solve any chicken egg problem is you have to have one side of the market have a clear benefit when the other side is not there. So Bitcoin has this solved, I believe by design or a bit of luck, I'm not sure, where the price of Bitcoin was designed to go up over time, and it's been volatile, and so people are trading on it, becoming aware of it, and the consumer side is reaching critical mass. And that's a prerequisite. So I think, we're just now getting to like a large number of consumers in the US who have it. I think, in Coinbase, we have roughly 650,000 consumer wallets. We're growing 31% month over month. So those are all good figures, which indicate adoption is happening very rapidly. And so merchants now are just starting to get excited about it. And the benefits to them are clear if they believe that people are actually going to pay with Bitcoin. Of course, they see low fees, no chargebacks, and it works internationally. And there's certain categories of merchants where they're actually in a huge amount of pain. Their business is due to some of these problems. And so a lot of the interest that we have from merchants now that we're talking with, and I wish I could share with you some of the ones that are in our business development pipeline, because they're pretty incredible.
Like bigger players, you mean?
Yeah. So I think you'll see some of those announced in 2014.
Cool.
Yeah, so it'll be exciting.
I'm curious, like, for me personally, it's like because of the swings and because of the potential upside, I save. I'm going to say, like, why would I go buy, a Subway sandwich when that could be, those, $4 or $5 I spent on that Subway could be worth $15 in a few weeks? You know? It's like, do you see the volatility being a major issue in that consumers are holding rather than actually using it as their daily spending coin? Yeah.
There's an interesting psychological effect that happens when you have an asset that is appreciated a lot, which is that you don't mind spending a little pieces of it to capture the upside. So I've noticed this with myself and my own Bitcoin that I have. So, I bought some Bitcoin when it was really cheap, and over the years have bought a little bit more. And it's appreciated. And so when people ask me for Bitcoin, I don't mind giving them $5 of Bitcoin, or we pay each other in the office, or we've bought some things online using Bitcoin. And I'm not going to sell 20% or 50% or 75% of my Bitcoin, but I don't mind spending small bits of it because it feels a little bit like free money to me. It's like I've captured all this upside from the appreciation. So that's one aspect. Another is that there's this interesting thing with Moore's law in computers, right? So computers get more powerful at the same price, every year, every 18 months. And so you could make an argument, well, why would you ever buy a computer? Because you would just delay, because a way better model is going to come out in 18 months, right? And of course, people still buy a ton of computers, and the reason is that there's a cost to deferring some things you want to buy. And that's also true for food, housing, transportation. If you want to take a trip or get married, you can't just defer all expenses forever. And so that's another argument for why, if you have Bitcoin and it's going up in value and it's some percentage of your net worth, you're still going to spend with it.
Some people have said out there that the daily spender, the daily, if I'm going to buy that Subway sandwich, it should be Litecoin or it should be another cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin should be more for the storage. And what are your feelings on Litecoin?
I mean, Litecoin's great. And of course, we hired the creator of Litecoin, Charlie.
He's working for you now, right?
Yeah. So
how much time does he spend on Litecoin? He's got to be freaking out because Litecoin's at $30 a coin or whatever, USD a coin, and is he still spending time working on that part time?
Well, there's a number of people who contribute to the open source Litecoin project, so he's a bit of an arbiter or something like that at this point. He's not writing a ton of code for it, but I mean, so Litecoin has similar properties to Bitcoin in terms of how it appreciates, the scarcity of it, and all that sort of thing. So I don't think there's a good argument for why it should be used for day-to-day purchases or anything like that instead of Bitcoin, but it does kind of make sense there's a number two in the market, right? I mean,
it feels like in any market, there's always going to be competition, and that's always a healthy thing. And do you feel like there's other cryptocurrencies? I'm obviously, in looking at the list, there's lists online of all these cryptocurrencies. There's 100 plus or whatever at this point. A lot of them are direct clones. A lot of them have been pre-mined. There's a lot of scams out there. There's some interesting ones, I believe personally, in a Pure Coin or a Prime Coin that actually have moved from proof of work to proof of stake, and looking for prime numbers. Do any of these catch your attention as ones that you would potentially integrate into Coinbase?
Not yet, but that doesn't mean it's never going to happen, right? I think we're watching the space really closely, and I like to read about all these new altcoins that are coming out as well.
Are there any that you like that you kind of keep tabs on?
No, I mean, there's not one that's gotten me as excited about Bitcoin. I think, and that's not to say it'll never happen, but there's not one yet that has really, captured my attention too much.
Litecoin, you having the head developer working with you, is he come on, dude, let's integrate this into the site, let's get this going? Is he pushing to try and have that be the second cryptocurrency that you guys offer?
I mean, we've talked about it a lot, obviously. I think he's a realist about it, though. I think we have all these. There's trade-offs to it, right? It adds complexity to the site.
Confusion to the end user. Which one do I buy?
It sort of begs the question: what are the different use cases of it? Why is one better than the other? So I don't know. Litecoin is. I think it's sort of like Coke, Pepsi, and there's this power law distribution of a lot of other little ones. Or there's Facebook, and there's probably there's Google Plus, and there's some social network in Russia or whatever. It's sort of like this power law distribution. So I think Bitcoin is not going to be supplanted or displaced. It'll always be the largest cryptocurrency there. But I like the fact that there are alternatives there that offer slightly different things to different people who want them.
Next year, wrapping things up, because I don't want to take too much of your time, because I'm sure your site's on fire right now, with all the users. Remember last time I told you were barely sleeping because of how much craziness was going on. Next 12 months, next year, I mean, we're almost at 2014. What does it look like for you, feature-wise? How big does your team get? You just announced congratulations on a huge round of funding. How do you spend that money, and what does the product look like over the next 12 months?
So I think the first thing we're going to work on doing is building out the team. We're still a surprisingly small team with only 8 full-time people and a number of contractors, probably about a dozen contractors around the world. And so the first thing we want to do, Bitcoin is probably the most interesting computer science problem I think out there in the world right now. It's probably not a stretch to say that. And we really need to continue building this world-class team of engineers and product people that we have so far to take that to the next level. So that's the first thing. I think also we're largely based in the US today with the options that we have for people to use Coinbase. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin is an inherently international thing. So I think, in our mission to make Bitcoin easy to use and all these sort of things, it's really important to make that accessible to a global audience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you could open in other markets locally.
I mean, it's certainly something we're interested in, right? And I think we would be remiss to not help Bitcoin have a global audience, right? There's other things that we can spend it on too. Like, for example, we have a great kind of customer acquisition strategy right now around giving away free Bitcoin. So we actually have it set up right now. We took a page out of PayPal's book here, where when you refer a friend and they get $5 worth of Bitcoin, you get $5 worth of Bitcoin. So it's a double-sided referral program, and that's been scaling really well. And we're kind of going to double down on that and help get Bitcoin in the hands of a whole bunch of new people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I do want to ask you one last question. I keep coming up with new questions before I finish.
Yeah.
iOS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that I downloaded the client when it was still available.
Yeah.
Any talks with Apple? Any updates there on whether or not this is ever going to return to the App Store?
I hope it does. Like, we're committed to working with Apple on that, and they, for now, they've made a decision where they're not comfortable with Bitcoin. I think they're still evaluating it, and that's fine. It's their App Store. They have every right to do that. So
did they call you up before they took it down, or did they just yank it from the App Store?
No, but I wouldn't have expected them to call me. I mean, they're busy. They have a lot of things to do, and so for now, they made a decision. They're not comfortable with it, and we're committed to working with them and helping them, hopefully see progress towards legitimate use cases of Bitcoin, and that there's customers who use their products who do want to use Bitcoin, and hopefully in the next couple of years that'll be helpful discussion to have.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more aggressive than you are. I just think we should I honestly thought about just ditching my iPhone as well.
Yeah.
It just really it's sad that had to happen, but I can say that. And I know you don't want to offend them, but I feel like Apple should bend here. So anyway, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in.